Hello, hello, everybody. We're still just letting people into the room. So please just give us a couple minutes to get everybody in here and get organized, and then we'll get started. If everybody doesn't know how to use Zoom, there's a chat at the bottom where we're going to ask you to put all of your questions. We're probably going to hold questions to the end. Lisa and I are here, but Rashidah, the lawyer that we work with on our team, is running late because she's at a closing. So we're going to change the format just a little bit to accommodate her presence not being here right at the beginning. And we'll see how things go. But just give us a couple minutes as we all sort of just get into the room as people are joining. We have a large group. And like I said, there's a chat on the bottom for you to ask questions. Keep everybody on mute for now. Put questions there. I do have somebody answering questions, and I'm keeping track of all the questions that are being asked. And hopefully we'll get to them all tonight. And if not, we can set something up to talk after this. Let's see. I'm going to wait till 5:05 so that we give everybody time to join the room. Okay, we're still just letting everybody into the room. Thanks everybody for joining. There's a large group of us now. We're at 41. I'm just going to wait for the rest of the rolling entries to happen. We're also waiting. We're not going to wait, but Rashidah, the lawyer that is on our team, is stuck at a closing and is going to join. Oh, maybe John will join in her place. And we will see. But we're going to get started in 1 minute. Like I said, there's a chat little icon at the bottom. Put all of your questions there. We usually hold questions till the end. We might change up the format just a little bit because of Rashidah running late, but that you should put all your questions there, because if I don't get them till tonight, I will follow up with you. We could always schedule a call to talk with any of us after this if we don't answer your question tonight, or if you want to speak in private instead of in this large forum. But feel free to put anything there. Okay, so I think I'm going to start talking. I'm gonna close that. Cool. Okay, so hi, everybody. My name is Victoria Alexander. I'm the owner of Realty Collective. I've owned the business for, it'll be 16 years this June, which is hard to believe and think about. I've been doing real estate for longer than that, if you can believe that. And Realty Collective, I started this company based on trying to sort of defy the stereotypes associated with real estate agents, especially in New York. We all know the negative associations that we think of when we think of a real estate broker in New York, and I have done everything in my power to defy that stereotype as much as possible. So I don't work with developers. I only work with small mom and pop landlords and first-time home buyers and sellers, and that we're really focused on helping regular people and their real estate needs, and not about making housing a business model. So the one thing I really love about this class is So the really thing that I love about this class is that I've been doing it for almost 15 years, that we used to do it in person at Brooklyn Brewery with our co-sponsors, Brooklyn based, with my associate Tina, and the in-person has just transformed to the online during COVID, and been a really great experience to work and help people through this process. The rent and buying numbers right now have never been closer. So I have buyers that are going to be spending $2,100, $2,200 on a mortgage this year, which is just unheard of in the past. And it's because of the interest rates and where the market has gone that has made buying so attainable for people. And I've been working with Lisa and Rashidah Rashidah was my lawyer when I was a buyer about 11 years ago. And Lisa, I've worked with her the last couple of years. She specializes in working with first-time home buyers and has worked with me now on so many deals that as a team, the three of us, I couldn't be happier with how successful we've been with working with clients. So I'm going to let Lisa introduce herself and see if Rashidah ends up joining.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa. I'm from CrossCountry Mortgage. I have been in the mortgage industry for about 6 or 7 years at this point, I think. I really like it. I really love working with first-time home buyers. As Victoria mentioned, rates are amazing. You've probably heard in the news, they've started to creep up a little bit, but it's still a fantastic deal, particularly for buying. A lot of the increase have more affected refinances than purchases. So we're still seeing rates for purchases anywhere between the high 2s to the low 3s, which is just spectacular. The one thing I'll just say as we get started is the mortgage industry the mortgage process is a very personal one. So, what I really like about my job is that I help every individual client based on their individual sort of file and background in terms of what they're looking for and what they're employed with, et cetera, find the right mortgage for them. And I think that's true for the real estate front and for the legal front as well. This is really a personal experience that's based on what you really need and want out of the purchase transaction.
And John, I'm going to ask John, does he want to jump in and speak for Rashidah? Or John, are you,
Yeah.
John works in Rashidah's office. Hi, John, nice to see you.
How you doing?
So at this juncture, Rashidah usually introduces herself and talks about, a little bit about Serpico, and Siddiqui.
So Rashidah and I have worked together. We're partners for about 20 years. I'm not sure where she is. I just texted her. I'm sure she'll be coming on in a moment. And we assist buyers and sellers with their transactions, with their real estate transactions. And I think we've got a lot of buyers here. So what that entails is probably teaching people for the first time what a real estate transaction is all about. So we try to assist them, and just like Lisa, it's a very personal transaction. It's very emotional. And we try to assist you to get you through the process. And we start with estimating closing costs and telling you about the process, which we'll get into today. And the more you know, the better the transaction is for you. So we really try to get you the information you need, the assistance you need, and get you into contract. If you're buying a condo or co-op, we check out the building, the financials, the offering plan. We read board minutes. We're very detailed to make sure that we know everything there is to know about the building and that you want to buy and live in that particular condo or co-op. Then we guide you through the process. Lisa takes care of the mortgage, gets you approved, and we go to closing. Closing is when you get the keys, when you sign all the papers, you get the deed to the property or the shares if it's a co-op. And unfortunately, you also get to start paying the mortgage. But that's part of the pride of owning property in New York or anywhere else. So we guide you through that process. We'll go into detail today and we'll answer whatever questions you have. And I'll probably go through this later on, but we give a free estimate of closing costs and a little synopsis about the process at the beginning of the process as a service to Victoria so that she gets you educated and for you so that you know what to expect. So we'll go through that again. All you need to do is email us or call us with the type of property it is, condo, co-op, or house, the purchase price, mortgage amount, and we can get you an estimate of closing costs and take a little bit of the mystery out of the process.
Thanks, John. And it's always really helpful. And I think that's a lot of where the questions come in today is like, how do you know that you're ready to buy and about your finances and what it's going to cost? And that's really why you want to have your team of people and your experts helping you analyze your situation. So the first question always people ask is, why buy? And there's a lot of reasons. For me, and what I always tell people, if they are interested in staying in New York, if you plan on living here, you should do everything in your power to buy something here because rents are going to continue to go up, even though we saw a dip this year. That interest rates, inflation, all those things change, and you're always just going to be working against not owning. So the rent is too damn high. You get to make your own design. You have a long-term investment. You're building equity. So there's lots of great reasons to buy. I would always say that it's like the plan is to stay here for 5 years, because you don't want to have to turn over a property within 5 years. So that's why it's super important that if you don't know where things are going to take you in 5 years, that probably owning a co-op is not for you, but probably focus on buying a condo so that if you do need to make a move for personal reasons or work, that you can rent the property out to cover your expenses and not take a loss, because there is a break-even horizon on making sure that you don't lose money on the investment. Next slide. So we also have a calculator that I did not make. The New York Times made it, and it's rent to buy matrix, where you get to put in your own personal numbers for purchasing, that how much you're renting for and currently, and then what your expenses would be for buying, and then seeing if it's a good financial investment for yourself. Somebody that's in a rent stabilized apartment might not necessarily be the right time to buy something. So I think that a link to that calculator is in the chat from one of my associates. Next slide. So this is the important first step, is to figure out if buying is for you, talk to a mortgage broker or banker and decide if the finances work for you. You have to have your down payment together, closing costs, and that everything makes sense. So you also need an attorney, and then a buyer needs a real estate broker. I think that there's a misconception, especially here in New York, that real estate brokers are only needed for the sellers and for the listings. But really, as a first-time home buyer who's never bought before, you need an advocate for you to guide you through the process and help you make sure that you're making the right decisions for yourself, that you're not influenced by market conditions, and that you're not leaving money on the table. And somebody that's been doing this a long time is going to help advocate and coach you through the process. And that's really what my job is, to be a coach for you. And those are the 3 people that you have to have. Then there's other people you might need, like an architect or an inspector. And the last thing you really need is lead time. If your lease is up April 1st, might not be enough time for you to make a move if your landlord is forcing you to sign a new lease and then you'd be locked in. So make sure that you are not making this decision in haste and that you have enough time to put all the pieces together and make the right decision for yourself. Next slide. So financing, and I hand it over all to Lisa on this slide.
So as Victoria said, one of the most important first steps is assembling your team. And one of the people you should be talking to first is me, or a mortgage professional, because I'm going to give you a good idea of how much you can afford, in the sense of how much you can get pre-approved for a mortgage. This is really important while you start looking at the process, because you don't want to fall in love with something that is beyond your budget in terms of a mortgage. And you also don't want to sell yourself short thinking, oh, I can only afford a $300,000 mortgage, which, maybe you can actually get a higher mortgage than that if you want to. So it's really important to talk to a mortgage professional in an initial call, and none of this advice or anything costs anything. This is just, sort of customer service in terms of getting you a good idea of what you can qualify for. We're going to talk about how much you make, your credit history, your employment, what you're looking for. And then I'll sort of crunch the numbers and get you a pre-approval. And that pre-approval is really a working draft. As you go out and see things with Victoria, your budget may change. You may start looking at co-ops and then decide, no, I want a condo. That's totally fine. The pre-approval is not set in stone. It's just sort of a fluid document that we use and that I can update whenever you need until you find the right place. In terms of different mortgage products, there's some really, really good questions here. So I'm going to take a few of them in a second. So question, broker, banker, what's the difference? To sum up very quickly, a broker is sort of a middleman between the banks and the client. Some banks, like, big banks like a Chase or Wells Fargo, for example, they have a Chase and a Wells Fargo product. What I sort of like about my company and what we do is we are a private mortgage bank. So we work like all the big banks, but all we do is mortgages. We have more than just like 3 or 4 different products. We have a wide variety of products. So it helps me sort of find the right product for you rather than fitting you into the 2 or 3 products I have. In terms of, should you go with a broker or should you go with a banker? You should go with a mortgage professional that you feel really comfortable with. Someone that is giving you a really clear and concise picture of both the process and what they can offer. Because this is buying a house is really stressful and it's really complicated. And so you really need to sort of have a mortgage person that is going to really help you understand the whole process and sort of stay with you through all the steps. In terms of different products to put down, there's FHA where you only put 3.5% down. That's more for single families or multifamilies. There are conventional programs where you put 20% down. There are programs where you put 10% down and then you pay mortgage insurance. So it really sort of depends as to what you're looking for in terms of what's the best product for you. And that's really what a conversation sort of helps determine. In terms of, I'll just do one more question for right now. Someone asked about an S Corp. So yes, if you are self-employed, you need to definitely have a conversation with a mortgage professional before you get a pre-approval. And part of that conversation will involve us looking at your tax returns. The general rule is to be qualified on your income, you need to pay taxes on it. So if you're not paying taxes on it, we can't use that income to qualify. That said, there's a lot of things that can be added back on your deductions from self-employment tax returns to help qualify. I always tell my self-employed borrowers, talk to me before you file your next year taxes. So for example, if you're looking at buying something this year and you haven't done your 2020 tax returns yet, I should see a draft of those before you file, because that will help make sure that you're using the proper income necessary to get you qualified.
Great. And we'll hopefully come back to more of the financing questions later on as we open it up. Thanks. Next slide. So where do you search? Which is a very difficult question right now, because some of you probably know that New York City and state does not have an MLS like they do in the rest of the country. So for the user or end user like you guys, you don't have one place to go that all the listings are in. So I know sure some of you are using StreetEasy or Zillow or Trulia. And as a real estate professional, I have access to all of the listings in one place and can do a search for you to put them all together. So it is challenging, I'm sure, to try to find things. And like Realtor.com and Zillow and Trulia, not so much StreetEasy, but that not the listings are not up to date. They could be phishing listings. When you are messaging somebody, you should make sure that you're messaging. You shouldn't message anybody because you should have a real estate professional representing you, because some of the ways that the websites are set up is so that you message a person that represents nobody and is looking to represent you. So there's a lot of false advertising and misleading information trying to get you to work with people that you randomly found on the internet. And no matter who you decide to work with, me or any other real estate professional or lawyer or mortgage broker, you should always vet this person have and decide who you want to work with, you have to spend a lot of time and energy. You have to spend a lot of time and have a lot of communication with this person, and you need to trust and feel confident in the information they're giving you. So you want to make sure that you're making a conscious decision of who you're working with. And make sure they have referrals or get from friends. But I think that the most thing is you have to like them and feel comfortable talking to them about, your needs and wants and desires and your finances as well. Okay, next slide. So finding the actual space. You're looking on all these sites I just mentioned, but part of what you're looking for might be part of a building typology, and you want to make sure that that typology actually fits into the neighborhood that you're looking at. If you are looking for pre-war buildings with lots of detail, like crown molding and exposed brick, or trying to think of other ones right now, but like you would not, or an elevator building or doorman, you probably would not find those things in, say, Williamsburg. A lot of new construction in Williamsburg, you're just not going to find pre-war details or co-ops in Williamsburg. So your search criteria needs to match up with what a neighborhood provides in sort of the ways of architecture and building typology. And I think we have a little article about how that works. And then about the financing part of it. If you really want to be in a full service building, if you're not in new construction, then you should be in an older co-op that has some of these services, and that will sort of steer what neighborhood you get to be in. And or school district, or being close to a park or subway. It's all going to drive what's available to you. So next slide. So this is where usually Rashidah jumps in, and John, I'll let you jump in a second. There's a lot of talk now about what to offer. The market has changed incredibly since the fall, and I really think it's super important that you are prepared to pay, but understand what that means long term, because interest rates are so low. When I bought my house, I paid 5.25% on my interest rate, and interest rates right now are under 3%. I know that's what Lisa's still offering a lot of the clients that we're working with together. And when you're looking at spending $10,000 or $20,000 more than you expected to, when you calculate that out over a month, it tends to be like $10, $20, or $30 at interest rates that are 2.75. So making sure that you're being aggressive once you find the thing that you want is important, but also putting in the terms and conditions in your offer that don't usually get negotiated out once the contract and deal sheets are out. So making sure your offer is contingent on financing. So that means if you can't get a loan from a bank, you still get your deposit back. So if you lose your job or any other situation that is out of your control, you can not lose your hard-earned deposit money that you've put down on contract. Making sure your offer is contingent on inspection, so that if there is something wrong with the space, that when an inspector finds out, you have a exit strategy. And then the other things are closing time and down payment amount and actual purchase price. And working with somebody that understands what's happening in the market, I think it would be really important to make sure that your offer is in line with the market conditions for that type of property.
Another good example of that.
Go ahead, John.
Another good example is new construction condo. The closing costs are quite different for a new construction condominium. The seller's transfer taxes are usually paid by the buyer, but that's something you can negotiate up front. And again, it does exactly what you said. It depends on the market. If it's a seller's market, the seller will probably not take up that cost. But if it's a buyer's market, you'll have a good chance and a lot of leverage to negotiate those transfer taxes.
Yeah, and somebody just asked about what kind of market we're in. I'm gonna burst someone's buzz bubble here on the prices really came down in Manhattan. And unfortunately, they're already back up on the rise. Brooklyn, there was some deals and opportunities, especially in the neighborhoods that were a little bit further out. But I would say like Williamsburg, Brooklyn Heights, unless somebody was in a strained scenario, there wasn't a lot of opportunity to take advantage of. So prices held for most of Brooklyn and are now rising. There's bidding wars on a lot of the properties that my clients are making offers on. And that's okay, because still, with interest rates being historically low, it's still a great opportunity to buy, even though you might not have taken advantage of the sort of very big dip we had, 6 to 9 months ago, which I also missed out on. So don't be kicking yourself too hard. And I ended up buying something, or I'm in contract to buy something from January in the Bronx, because I realized I missed the moment for Brooklyn at the end of December when things started to change, and things have really changed just in the last 60 days. So it's been interesting to be thing to be part of. So John, do you want to talk more about negotiating terms and getting into contract?
Yeah, so the way it works is, and this is unique to New York as well, most other states have realtor-driven contracts. You sign the contract, the buyer signs the contract, presents it to the seller with all the terms, and then the seller signs it. There's an attorney review period, so you get to make some changes, but mostly the contract's done up front. Here, you make an offer, it could be verbal, it gets accepted verbally, and then there's a deal sheet that Victoria would put together with all the terms, these terms that we just talked about, the basic and major terms, mortgage contingency, obviously the price, down payment, and other terms like that, timing, when is the closing, so that gets all up front. Then I get the deal sheet. Now the seller's attorney prepares the contract. I get it from the buyer's attorney, and this is where we can negotiate more terms, because you may not know. I get it all the time. Did you waive your mortgage contingency? No, but sometimes the deal sheet comes across my desk and says there's no mortgage contingency. So there's still a little bit of flexibility, because ultimately nothing's firm until both parties sign the contract. So there could be a lot of room for further negotiation, but you don't want to jeopardize the deal by changing the terms too much. I can massage some of the terms in the contract to make them more palatable for you, but really those first important negotiating points and offer is very important, that you get it pretty precise of what you need. So you really do need to know the closing costs, and you need to meet with Lisa and know what you can afford and that it's going to work. So it's really important that you do that. And then we can get to the point of the contract and the due diligence, I guess, at another point, Victoria, or I guess you're
No,
ready.
we usually then go into, so everybody, there's a meeting of the minds, the contract gets worked out, and then once the contracts are signed and you put down your deposit, and that's usually 10% down at contract signing after the inspection, that's when the lawyers start doing the due diligence process. And John, you can talk about what due diligence means. For somebody asked what the difference between a co-op and a condo is, so maybe also you can try to weave that in as well.
Okay. So before you sign the contract, also, we do the due diligence, and we perform that task for you. It means that we want to investigate the building. Now, if you buy a house, you do a home inspection. You want to make sure everything's working, there's no leaks, the foundation is solid. Well, you're buying into a 100-unit condominium, you're not going to hire an inspector because it's going to be too expensive. So the way we look under the hood, so to speak, is we look at the offering plan, which is the document that was established to disclose what the building is all about, when it became a condo or a co-op. It has the bylaws in there, how they run meetings, what's included in the common charges or maintenance. And it's a pretty big document. They're usually 500 pages or more. And we review that for you and point out all the important points that you need to know. So what are you getting? Are the windows included? Is the hot water heater included in your unit? Did you pay for it specifically? So we look at all that. Then that's the historic document and the sort of foundation for the condo or co-op. Then we look at the current financials. Most every condo and co-op, except for maybe some smaller ones, have certified financial statements. And in there, they're required to put certain things. How much are their reserves? What are their expenditures? Where are they spending the money? How does it change from year to year? Have there been increases? Are there assessments for improvements? Is there litigation with the company? So that's a great document to let us know what's going on right now. But it's not the end all, because right now, if we were to investigate a co-op or condo that you want to buy today, the financial statement would be from 2019. The 2020 financial statement isn't out. So there's a year's gone by. And the way we investigate further is we look at the board minutes. We find out exactly what the board is talking about. Are they going to increase the assessments, common charges? Are they going to levy an assessment? So we really get to know everything about the building so that I can tell you, hey, you know what? this building's been talking about renovating the roof for years, and it looks like they're about to do it. And you're going to buy into there. And what likely will happen is either they'll have to borrow the money to pay for that repair, or they're going to have to do an assessment. So we try to make sure that we take a snapshot of this building and let you know what you're in for and what's going on. Now, the difference between a condo and a co-op is ownership structure. A condo is like a house. You get a deed, you own the title, you own the unit. But the difference between a condo and a house is in a condo, you also own a share of all the common elements, the elevators, the facade, the gym, the lobby, all the shared portions. If there are 100 units and they're all equal size, you own 1% of those shared elements. If there's a $100,000 assessment, you pay $1,000. That's how that works. A co-op is a corporation owns the building, the whole thing, and you are a tenant in the building. So you're a shareholder and a tenant. And you're a tenant just like any other tenant in the city of New York. You get a lease and you have to abide by the lease. Just so happen to own a portion of the building. Similarly with the condo, if there are 100 units and they're all equal size, you own one share, there's a $100,000 assessment, you pay a $1,000 assessment for your share. So once we complete all the due diligence, we know everything there is to know about the building, the contract's negotiated, that's when the buyer signs first. We send it back to the seller signs it, and not until your attorney gets the contract back fully executed is it a firm deal, subject to mortgage approval, and of course, if it's a co-op, board approval. As you know,
So
in a
then
co-op,
it
it's like a
goes-
club. Get Lisa?
Sorry, go ahead, John, go ahead.
No, and a co-op's like a
Well, I was
club.
gonna say, and then it goes into underwriting. So-
Yeah. And that's another whole story. It's like there are 3 phases. There's the beginning phase,
Sorry,
contract.
can you guys hear me
diligence.
okay? My internet went a little funny.
Oh, yeah. The mortgage and the title search, and then the closing. And we'll get to all that further on there. But you really need to know what you're getting into. So the due diligence is very crucial so that you know everything there is to know about this particular building and you want to live there.
100%. So I'm going to then, once we're in contract, then the executed contract gets sent to the brokers, and the brokers usually then kick it to the mortgage representative, who then gets to start the financing, which is the underwriting part that Lisa was just mentioning there. So Lisa, tell us what happens once contracts are signed and the bank starts reviewing the building and the
Right, so first of all, as John mentioned, the due diligence is really important. The things you want to keep in mind, like litigation, if the sponsor owns more than 50% of the building, these are things that you want to tell your mortgage professional as soon as you know, because that might change the deal. So that's very important to know. And you know, what's great about like the team that we work with is if Rashidah sees that, she immediately lets me know. So it doesn't like come as a surprise, which is perfect. Once you have a fully executed contract, it's a live deal. So that means like we're out of the pre-approval process and we are getting you approved for a mortgage. The first thing we do is we order the appraisal. And if it's a condo or a co-op, we order a questionnaire and some documents from the management company. And then we work at getting your file into underwriting. And I have to say, this is when my team really shines, and I'm so proud of them. We do a really good job up front of making sure that everything works with this deal. There's no problems, so that we get you into underwriting as quick as possible. That's really important, because the faster you get through underwriting, the faster you have your mortgage approval, which just, you know, on one hand, just gives you a little sigh of relief of like, okay, this is all great. This is happening. Things look good. If you're looking at getting a co-op, it's even more important, because the co-op is not going to schedule your board interview until they have a mortgage approval. One of the things that I think really makes me and my team stand out is that even with this volume, we are like ridiculously fast through underwriting. So I actually submitted a deal to underwriting today, and I got this morning, and I got the approval before 3. And my processor was like, really, can I have a day to wait before I have to go back to this file? But I mean, it really is where we shine, and it's really important because it makes sure that you don't have any delays You need to get that mortgage approval before the mortgage contingency date on your contract. And you want to get that board interview scheduled as soon as possible, because some boards say, hey, come on in tomorrow. And some boards say it's going to be a month before we see you. So you really want to get that going as soon as possible. Once we have the mortgage approval, it comes with some conditions, like, proof of insurance. So when you buy a property, you have to pay for your first year's insurance up front. So you'll need to get that done prior to closing. Any other little documents. And then once you get us those things, then we get what's called the clear to close. And that means, hey guys, we are ready to do this. And you're ready to schedule the closing and close.
So simultaneously with your mortgage application and getting everything to Lisa, if you're buying a co-op, you're also putting together your board application, which sometimes could be more onerous than what Lisa requires. They want references, they want recommendations, they want employer letters. So Victoria will help you with that because it's an involved process. And we want to make sure that by the time you get your mortgage approval, all you do is slip the commitment into the package and you submit it to the board that very next day. So you start work on that application right away. There's also a similar process in condos. Technically, a condo can't disapprove you or approve you, but they have what's called a waiver process. I won't get into the details, but they have a similar application process where they want to know about you and get financial information, even though they can't disapprove you from buying.
100%. So if you're buying a co-op, you do have to do a co-op board application. It is tedious, but my team and I make it really seamless because we've just been doing it for so long. It's hopefully the least stressful part of the process because we've made it so easy for you. There's a lot of great.
Involves an interview.
I'm sorry, John.
And sometimes most of the time it involves an interview where they want to meet you in person.
Yep. And then usually there's an interview process for the co-op. So every co-op condos buildings all have a little bit of different nuances depending on which one you're moving forward on. So say all of that happens, then you get to closing. John gets to say, hey, Lisa says the bank is giving you the loan. John or Rashidah from talk to the seller's attorney and schedule the closing and align that with the bank, and everybody comes together on one joyous day to make the transaction happen. John, anything you want to add about the day of closing?
Well, you say we get together on the joyous day, or sometimes we don't get together because we do
it's all
closings remotely. A lot of times we do the closings remotely now. Most of the time with the buyers we meet, because there's the mortgage documents, we want to do that in person. Review every document that you're signing so you understand what you're signing. But most of the sellers don't show up to the closing anymore. And I don't know if that'll stick after COVID, but it has its plus and minuses.
There's also some other things, we can't go over everything today. And I do want to get into a lot of these questions like the final walkthrough. That happens, especially, or there's a punch list if you're doing new construction. So like I said, there's a bunch of nuances based on the type of property and transaction you're dealing with. And that's why it's important you have your team of experts to guide you through the process. Somebody asked me early on in this, I'm going to try to go through some of these questions, if it's about having a mortgage professional. And I'm just going to say from experience, please do not walk into your Chase or your Bank of America or your Wells Fargo and work with the person that is sitting behind the desk at the mortgage desk. And specifically Wells Fargo, I have had multiple situations where appraisals haven't come in. I've had very frustrating experiences making sure the deals get closed for my clients because they didn't work with somebody that was an expert that understood the challenges of the New York City real estate market. Usually when you're calling Chase, the person on the other end of the line is not here in New York City. Co-ops are specifically very complicated when it's come to the financing portion. So it is in your benefit. The pricing is basically the same. I would not say that you're saving any money, but what you are getting by working with this professional is a very you're getting a lot of hands-on experience and guidance that you wouldn't normally get from walking into your branch. And I can't say it enough from, hi, From iPhone Woman. That's so good. I'm glad you got here. So I am excited that everybody joined us today. And so I'm going to keep going through any of these questions. If you can't stay for the rest of this, we are going to send this presentation out via email, but I'm going to start going through people's questions. And I want to thank everybody for coming today for our very short and brief presentation for a very much more complicated process, but wanted to give you all a taste of where to start. The other questions that I'm seeing on here, how much lead time do you recommend? I would say 4 to 6 months. If you have to be out of your apartment in 3 months or under, it's really such a challenge because that's the timeline for once you find the property. You don't want to start too far out either though, because then you'd be losing money or breaking a lease. So understanding what the timeline is, and I'm happy to talk to anybody about what their lease terms look like and negotiating an out clause for buying if that was something that you were thinking about doing with your landlord, because some landlords are fine with you leaving if you give 90 days notice. And if you have to re-sign, if you ask them to give you that clause, it would be, and you're renegotiating your lease now, that would be a perfect example of how to do it. What other questions? I'm going to try to scroll back.
Well, the closing from deal acceptance to closing, it's roughly 2 months, maybe longer, depending on the co-op board, if they may take a long time to approve you. The seller may have certain requirements. The seller may say, look, I got to look for a place to move to, and I'm not going to start looking until I have an accepted offer and a contract. And then they may want a closing time 4 months from now. So there are a lot of factors that go into the timing of how long the offer to closing process will take.
We had a question that came in via email that I think was a lawyer and mortgage expert question that I don't feel qualified to answer. It was a question on taxes and building classification. I emailed it out to you, Lisa.
Oh, right. That was such a great question.
I've seen some houses for sale that were previously 4-family and were renovated into a 2-family building. That case, will the building need to be reclassified? And would taxes be reassessed without the limit on growth? Or is the building still taxed at a 4-family building with 8% yearly limit on tax growth, even though it's now physically a 2-family? So
so I'm going to talk a little bit about the mortgage end, but then John's definitely going to have some stuff to add too. So this is a really important question. So let me give you an example. You go see a brownstone in Brooklyn. The open house has it listed as, I don't know, 2 duplexes. But John, during his due diligence, finds out that it's classified by DOB, Department of Building, as a 4-unit building. Okay, that's an issue. Just because 4 units have been changed to 2 duplex, if the DOB hasn't changed the certificate of occupancy, then for the mortgage purposes, it's still a 4-family. An even better example that's more often happening is an open house where you see a brownstone with a little in-law unit below it, okay? And the realtor is saying, hey, this is a 3-unit. But in fact, the in-law is not a legal unit. So by DOB standards, it's a 2-unit. That is an issue because the mortgage is always going to go by DOB. Okay, so John, you can talk about what you would do in that situation legally.
Well, in the mother-daughter apartment, in that situation, we need the appraiser to see a 2-family.
Yep.
And so how we skirt around that is we take out the stove in the basement apartment. Lisa, turn your muter. Don't
we all know.
Now, technically, you could have a sink, you could have a refrigerator, you could have a wet bar in the basement. That's all fine, but you can't have a working stove. That sort of all of a sudden makes that not a 3rd apartment. So there's certain things that we do to do that. But then you have to realize that when you're buying a house that's only a 2-family, only a legal 2, it's not a 3. There are some issues when you rent that basement apartment out and the tenant doesn't pay rent. It's not that easy to evict them because they're not in a legal apartment. They can show that you're in violation. So there are all kinds of hazards in buying buildings that aren't properly, the physical doesn't match the legal. So you have to be really careful. Now that 4-unit one, go ahead, Lisa.
No, I was just going to say, and in terms of the taxes, from the mortgage perspective, we go by what's recorded from the city. So part of title and mortgage is getting what the taxes are. Whatever the taxes are is reported from the city, That's what we're using for the tax qualification for the mortgage purposes.
And if it's listed as a 4-family of the Department of Buildings, that's how they're going to tax it. No
100%.
matter if you live there as a single family, 2-family, 2 duplexes, it's going to be taxed at how it's legally classified.
Great. I'm glad that we went over that because that was a little complicated, I thought, as well. And I'm glad we have the right people to answer these questions. Erica asked, I'm about to turn 50 and I've never owned a home. I'm in a rent stabilized situation. Does it even make sense to get into a 30-year mortgage at this age? Yes, because the 30-year is just an arbitrary number. Well, I'm sure there's history to why it's 30 years, but you're not going to live in this property for 30 years. I've lived in my house for 10 years, and I'm so thankful that I did buy because I have accrued so much equity in the property that would be what you're probably paying in rent. I mean, even if you're paying $1,000 a month in your rent stabilized apartment, that's $12,000 that you could have put into a savings of the equity of the property that you'd get when you sold. So I always think if you plan on staying in New York, you should buy. If you can physically do that by getting approved for a mortgage and finding a property that you want to live in. I can talk to you about your specific rent stabilized situation and see if the numbers make sense, but we could also use the calculator, and I'm happy to talk more about the specifics. But I think that always, if you have the opportunity to purchase something and you plan on staying in New York, you should take advantage of that. It's in your benefit. It's like having a savings account. The rent you pay, you will never see again. It should be for your benefit, not for somebody else's.
And I always like to give this an example. I have a client, she bought in 1994 on Smith Street in Brooklyn. She paid $175,000 for a 2-bedroom apartment, which was a lot of money for her at that time. She was a school teacher, but she stretched a little bit and she made it work. She did sell it 2 years ago for $1.4 million.
And just think about not only the money that she built in the appreciation, but also all the money she saved on not paying rent all of those years that she gave to, that she could have given to a landlord.
Yeah.
That's like the biggest thing I tell people that when I'm trying to help them calculate these numbers for themselves. Like if you spent $25,000 this year on rent, you will never see that money again. You've given it away. If you've put $25,000 towards your mortgage, you have a portion of that put towards the equity and the interest on the property, but you're going to see a return on that investment in yourself. So I'm going to go down. How do you know when you're ready? Some people, so I'm going to say one thing about knowing you're ready. Some people don't have the down payment money. Some people, so just because you don't have the actual cash in a savings account doesn't mean you're not ready. Talking to somebody about, can you borrow against your 401k? A lot of my clients are doing that right now because the penalties are so low and the interest rates are so good. Taking a loan or a gift from a family member, if, you know, I think it's up to $30,000 a year, your parents can give you, right, Lisa? Is that $30,000 a year that tax-free your parents are allowed to give you as a gift each year? And there's some real tax benefits for that scenario.
Well, you can give more than that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the gift situation from a mortgage standpoint is not really about, it's not a one-to-one classification as to the tax write-off for a gift. A gift from a mortgage situation just means us sourcing money that's not in your account. So money that's not from you, but from another person. It has to be typically a family member and it's a gift. In terms of the tax benefits, of a gift, that's really a question that you can have with your accountant, but it's not a one-to-one. Like just because you're doing a gift for a mortgage doesn't mean that that's necessarily going to be the same amount that's a gift on your tax returns.
Right.
So it's just a discussion to have with your mortgage professional and with your accountant. But I will also say on the down payment front, that's another reason why it's really great to talk to a mortgage person as early as possible, because I can give you some plans. It's like, okay, so this is how much you would need, you know, and then, you know, we can come up with a plan and maybe it's buying now and maybe it's buying a year from now. I mean, I'll tell you, I talked to a recent client that was at one of these webinars and she started off the conversation by saying, I'm telling you right now, I don't have the down payment. Let's just have a conversation. I think I'll buy in a year. we started looking at the numbers, and she actually just went into contract. So she found a place that worked and found a down payment that worked for what she wanted. So, you know, I think it's definitely worth exploring options, because like options are always better than not having options. And then you can decide when you want to move forward.
I agree. That makes me so happy to hear. I always wouldn't think when people are like, it's not for me. I'm never going to be able to buy anything. And then like they talk to the right people and they make it happen. And then they get to own their own piece of New York or Brooklyn and make it their home permanently. And then it just gives you it's such an empowering experience, I think, too. We did the S Corp question. Do renters ever get a chance to buy the apartment they're in? So if you're renting in a condo building or in a co-op and the owner decides to sell, they might give you the option to buy it. If the person that owns your building is converting the property to co-op or condo, but that is very rare, I would say, and not necessarily, you couldn't just buy the apartment in a apartment building. If your landlord owns the whole building, they probably are not going to just make your unit sellable to you unless they converted the whole building. So I would say it's a more rare situation. I'm not going to say it doesn't happen, but you know, wilder things have happened. If we have a lease, how much lead time do you recommend? We went over that a little bit. We'd be hosting your questions on your. I think I got most of these questions. Following up on the rent stabilization, can you include HOA fee aspect for a condo co-op into that discussion? Maybe some clarification. Following up on rent stabilization, can you include the HOA fee aspect of a condo co-op into that discussion? So you do get to write off some of your maintenance fees for condos and co-ops on your taxes. I'm not sure if that's exactly what you're asking.
But you bring up a good point to maybe get into the taxes. In a condo, you pay your own taxes for your unit. Each unit is separately taxed. In a co-op, the building is owned by one company, so there's one tax for that whole lot, and it's included in your maintenance. So in a condo, you get a real estate tax deduction that you pay directly. In a condo, a portion of your maintenance is deductible. That's attributable to the underlying real estate taxes.
Yeah. Somebody else asked, is it wise to buy solo or with a co-buyer? So if you're buying with more than one income, then you probably have more spending power. So it just depends on what that looks like for you. If you want to buy something that's more expensive that you can't afford on your own, then buying with somebody else but then you're legally tied to that person. So just be careful about who that is. We do have an article that I think Samantha on my staff shared about buying with friends, but it looks like maybe you're asking about buying with a family member. So I had to have my parents co-sign. This is one of the classes I didn't get to tell my personal story of how I ended up buying my house, but I had to jump through a lot of hoops. I own my own business. So everybody that's asking about being a freelancer, I totally relate to. I've owned this business, like I said, for 16 years, and like everybody else, I tried to keep my income as low as possible for tax reasons and write lots of things off. So it was very challenging to get a mortgage approval. So I had to have my parents co-sign they're still on the legal deed to my house, but I don't owe them any money, but the bank would not give me a loan without them saying that they were co-signing the loan for me. I did a whole bunch of crazy things. Like I sold my old engagement ring to get the down payment. And I did a FHA loan where I only had to put down 10%. So it was right after the financial crash in 2009, and it was a really great opportunity. And I had a real estate broker, even though I am a real estate broker, because I needed to be talked into it and understood what I was thinking about, because I was letting a lot of my emotions drive decision-making, and then also fighting with my parents at the same time interfere with my search process and decision-making. So having that coach is really important. And even as an expert myself, I needed somebody to guide me through the process. So just remember that's what this person's job is, to help and guide you through this process. Lisa, do you want to say something?
No, I actually have to jump off in a second because I have childcare issues. But there's 2 mortgage questions I just wanted to give a quick thing on before I jump off.
Yeah.
So one is about buying something and renting it out. If it's a 1 unit, you have to realize rates are different if it's an investment property or if it's a primary. So if you're buying a condo, for example, but you're not going to move into it, then that's an investment property. And that needs to be, you know, you need to make sure that that is clear, like from the get-go, because that's going to change the structure of your mortgage application. If you're moving into it, then it's a primary. Or for example, if you're buying a house upstate or in a different city that you're going to use as a vacation home, you know, every once in a while, maybe Airbnb when you're not there, then that's a second home. In terms of buying, someone said, can you buy a multi-unit building without having the 20% down where you use rental income? Yes. So if you buy a let's say you buy a 3-family, you're going to live in one and you're going to rent 2 out. You 100% can do that where you are using the proposed rental income to help you qualify. And on a specific, you know, on a call, like we can discuss the whole details of that. You can potentially do an FHA that would be 3.5% down, but all of this is determined by the purchase price. So because there are purchase price cap limits, you know, for FHA and for various programs. So that's sort of something to have a deeper conversation about, but it is possible. And then the last thing I would just say is someone asked one other thing. I think that's about it. And I'm sorry, I have to jump off. My kids are like going crazy, but I'm totally here. If you guys have any contact or any questions, Victoria has, you know, you're going to get my information. I'm absolutely happy to jump on the call. And, you know, this is definitely an individual process. So you guys probably each have specific questions about your scenario, and I'm happy to talk to you about them.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Really appreciate
Sure.
your time. I'll talk to you tomorrow, I'm sure, about all. Have a good night. Thanks. So I know that Rashidah joined, and I want to give Rashidah and John an opportunity to answer any other questions and introduce themselves. And just as we're getting close to 6 o'clock, I want to be conscious of people's time also and things on time. And we can talk further one-on-one for anybody that has further questions.
Thank you, everyone.
Hi, Rashidah.
Hi, how are you? I was actually wrapping up a closing that started at 3 o'clock and got pushed to 4 because they were waiting on documents. So the life of a real estate attorney. So just finished up and glad I can at least catch the end part of it. But I know you guys had great questions, and John stepped in, my partner, which is awesome, and was able to give some valuable information. So glad it's a nice turnout as well.
Yeah, really great. Does anybody, I'm just going to ask here, and have any specific attorney questions that they want to take advantage of, why both John and Rashidah are here? We're going to send everybody's contact information out after this. We have a home buyer's guide and lots of other resources to share with you. But I would say, think this, like, it's most important that you get on the phone one-on-one with somebody and talk about what the benefits are. And I just want to reiterate that hiring a real estate agent and working with one does not cost you anything. I get paid by the seller. I know there's a misconception about what the advantages of that are, but it is a disadvantage to not have somebody representing you. Same thing with Lisa, the banks and the mortgage brokers, all the fees are basically the same. There's some slight differences. Lawyers are, you know, you're going to get what you pay for there. So I would say make sure that you're vetting the person and making sure they are New York City real estate attorney, that they are familiar with the nuances. Do not hire your uncle. And I can't speak more highly of all. Like I said, Rashidah was my lawyer 11 years ago when I bought my house. So can't speak enough about working with John and Rashidah. Okay, it looks like most of no other last questions came in. So again, I'm just going to thank everybody for their time and wish everybody good night. And hopefully I'll be talking to some of you soon in the future. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, guys. I appreciate
Take care.
it. Yeah, thank you so much. Love everybody's leaving comments. Oh, the honest explanations. Sure, Alina. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.